Good morning, everyone. We'd like to get this started. First, I want to thank everybody, both behind me and in front of me, and people throughout California for their continuing interest in this incredibly important issue. I think because you've seen the interest continue to grow and be sustained is a testament to the importance that we're dealing with today. I'd like to thank all members of the coalition here behind me, fellow Assembly members Burke, Chu, Garcia, Stone, Rendon, Bonta, Senator Pro Tem De Leon, Chu, I said two Chus, and of course, Compassion and Choices, Brittany Maynard's mother, Debbie Ziegler, her husband, Dan Diaz, and we also have joined with us here today, I'll speak about her later, Jennifer Glass's husband, Seymour. So we're very grateful that all these people can be here, as well as members from the clergy and others. When we first introduced the End of Life Option Act in January, we did so with a rocket of momentum generated by the story of one woman, that face that was attributed to that, Brittany Maynard, about the choices she made about her terminal diagnosis and the options she wished she had and that she wished everybody else in California had. Her legacy carried us a great distance. To the entire nation, she became the face of others who have been given that terminal diagnosis, something nobody wants, but when given it, wishing that they have the options all available to them at the end of their life to be able to die on their own terms, and not only for herself, but for all Californians to be able to have that. While it carried us a long way, we weren't successful in that earliest endeavor, but the momentum continues to build, and we do not want her or the thousands of others who are waiting to be left behind. Jennifer Glass, who spoke so eloquently, and her words stayed with me long after she spoke, died last week. She died a week ago today, not in the way she wanted, but she died knowing today was coming and knowing that the fight would continue on after her death. In April, she wrote an essay entitled, talked about where she supported the End of Life Options Act, and she said, "Endings matter, and I want the last word in how my story ends." And that's why we've introduced this bill today. We're going to make sure she and others like her have the last word. The members of this coalition here today will do everything in their power to ensure that the last word is the End of Life Options Act, and that the last word is this assembly bill, that the last word is that this legislature has been responsive not only to the will of an overwhelming number of Californians, but to the people who are counting on us to win the freedom for them to approach the end of life in the way that they choose. I'd like to now to introduce Senator Pro Tem De Leon.
Thank you very much, Assemblywoman Eggman Talamantes. I want to thank each and every one of you for attending this very important press event. I want to thank you very much for your very strong leadership. I also want to recognize the majority leader of the California State Senate, Bill Monning, as well as Senator Lois Wolk for their strong, dignified way and how they have moved this issue forward. I want to thank again Susan Eggman Talamantes, Bill Monning, and Lois Wolk for their very collaborative effort, and to all the incredible assembly members who are here today. As the leader of the State Senate and the leader of the Democratic Caucus, I stand in strong support of AB 2X15, the End of Life Options Act. I signed on as a co-author to Assemblywoman Eggman's measure, because I believe in the importance of choice for those who are facing this very difficult decision with regards to ending of life. It is time for terminally ill Californians to have the same right to die in peace as now allowed in other states. As you have seen today, support for this law runs across all demographics in the state of California. The decisions one must take when at the end of life are deeply, deeply personal. Those decisions should remain with the individual as a matter of personal freedom and liberty, without, and let me underscore and emphasize, without criminalizing those who help to honor our wishes. Californians are ready for this choice, And I think with the appropriate safeguards that this bill has in place, the authors have demonstrated this bill will give them that choice. The time is now. The time is right to pass this very important legislation. Again, I want to thank very much Assemblywoman Talamantes Eggman, Senator Bill Monning, and Senator Lois Wolk for their consistency, for their very hard work, for not giving up and staying committed to this issue. This is a very difficult issue. It's a very polarizing issue. It's a very polemic issue. It's an issue that's so deeply personal. Obviously, all folks are split across the board. But the data is very clear as well. So many Californians, irrespective of ethnicity, income level, geographical area of residency, are highly in support of this measure. In fact, 60% of Catholics support this option. So the time is right, and I want to thank again Susan Eggman Talamantes, Bill Monning, Lois Wolk, and all the Assembly members here today in strong support of this measure. I'll say a couple words in Spanish, and then we'll move on. Como líder del Senado Estatal y líder de la bancada demócrata, estoy en firme apoyo de la propuesta AB 2X15, el Acta de Opciones de Fin de Vida. Como autor del proyecto de ley del asambleísta Eggman y también Bill Monning y Lois Wolk, creo en la importancia de esta opción para aquellos que enfrentan el fin de la vida. Los californianos no pueden esperar más. Hoy día hay individuos mentalmente competentes, con enfermedades terminales, con gran dolor, que buscan la ayuda de sus electos oficiales para tener la opción de ayuda para morir, pero que les niegue la autonomía de acercarse a la muerte en sus propios términos. Y quiero enfatizar y subrayar, sus propios términos. Casi 7 de 10 residentes del estado están de acuerdo que las personas deben tener la opción de reducir el sufrimiento de dolor, al tomar un medicamento que ayuda a morir. No ayuda a estas personas y a sus familias al no tomar acción ahora. El proyecto de la ley continúa los esfuerzos establecidos por la SB 128 por los senadores Lois Wolk y Bill Monning, al permitir que los adultos con las enfermedades terminales tengan la opción de solicitar un medicamento recetado por un doctor y reducir su proceso de muerte. Todas las señales apuntan a cada uno de nosotros, los electos oficiales, para que actúen en esta medida lo más pronto posible. 2 recientes fallos de la Corte Suprema han subrayado que sí es el papel de la legislatura estatal para revocar la prohibición que existe sobre la ayuda de morir. Quiero dar las gracias al asambleísta Susan Eggman Talamantes, también a los senadores Bill Monning y Lois Wolk por su gran esfuerzo, por su dedicación, por su apoyo en un tema tan polarizante y tan polémico y tan controvertido, sin lugar a dudas. Pero es una decisión muy personal a cada uno de nosotros. Y el más del 60% de los católicos hoy en día a lo largo y ancho del estado de California apoya esta opción. Así que quiero enfatizar y subrayar, quiero dar las gracias, Susan Eggman Talamantes, a todos los asambleístas hoy día con nosotros, pero especialmente del Senado, Bill Monning y Lois Wolk. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Again, I want to thank the senator. I think this shows with work with Senator Wolk and Senator Monning and the Speaker Pro Tem the strength of the bicameral approach that this has evolved into. I'd like now to invite up my former seatmate and dear friend, Chair of the Latino Caucus, Luis Alejo.
Good morning, everyone. As chair of the Latino Legislative Caucus, I'm very proud to be here because this is one of the most important pieces of legislation that we will be deliberating on this year, and we're going to keep fighting until we send this to the governor's desk and make it a reality for the families of those who are suffering, our loved ones. I'm honored to join in as a joint author of this very important piece of legislation to give those with terminal illness the option to end their suffering in a peaceful and dignified way. By standing here today, continue to be a voice for this issue, we are not only fighting for those who seek this option, but also those who have lost their battles to terminal illness. As a state, we should respect the wishes of those with terminal illness who desire their option to end their suffering peacefully and privately with their loved ones. In recent years, public attitudes towards death and dignity have changed due to education and the humanization of this issue. The stories that we hear in the press are those stories that put a human face to this very difficult issue. Recently, the nation watched Brittany Maynard move her family from California to Oregon so she could peacefully end her suffering from terminal brain cancer under Oregon's Death and Dignity Act. But her dying wish was to see a similar option enacted in California. And as a member of the state's legislative body, we should keep her memory alive by respecting her wishes. But unlike Brittany, there are thousands in California who are suffering but don't have the means nor the resources to pack up and move to another state. Her story saddens me because California should have more options available to those who are suffering every day besides moving to another state or simply living in constant pain. While this bill is about allowing the terminally ill to peacefully end their suffering, there is another piece to this bill, their loved ones. There's nothing more painful than watching someone suffering and being powerless to help them. Speaking from personal experience, California should have a law that respectfully allows terminally ill residents to make their own choice. Individuals are suffering and we should give them the dignity and respect to make their best options when it comes to their health. A previous version of this bill had a setback, but it's not over here in the legislature. And I do not want to see this issue go to a ballot next year because that means that the legislature would not be doing its job debating this topic and addressing the safeguards which only approve this legislation. If there are concerns, we could have language in this bill to address those. But this is about respecting personal choice, and I look forward to sending a piece of legislation with all of my colleagues who have fought so bravely to move this forward. We will not give up this fight, and we will struggle till we make this a reality for our families, so almost 40 million residents of California. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Alejo. And now our other joint author, Assemblymember Stone.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you all for being here today. There are points in our history in California when we come across an issue that is so compelling, that is so ripe for resolution. This is clearly one of those issues. I want to thank Senators Wolk and Monning for bringing this to us in January, Ms. Eggman for bringing it to us now in extraordinary session. About 3 weeks ago in my district, we held a forum. And that forum, I was on a panel with some of our leading medical society folks as well as clergy. And the stories that we heard from the audience, from the people who came and talked to us, yes, the momentum for this bill started with a story, but the momentum carries on with thousands of stories. And if you look at the demographics in California, you look at the opinion in California, clearly Californians are all ready for Death with Dignity Act with end-of-life options. But the question before us now is the legislature. So far, it's been a struggle in the legislature, but we are here before you today. We are here in the legislature to ensure that the legislature will implement the will of the people of California and put together the strongest, most protective, best policy that we absolutely can. There's no dignity in suffering. There is no dignity in suffering, but there is dignity in the options that we give people in how they manage their end-of-life process. Thank you for being here today. Thank you to my colleagues for being here today, standing up for this very, very important policy.
Thank you. And now I'd like to invite up our Chair of the Health Committee, Assemblymember Rob Bonta.
Good morning. My name is Rob Bonta. I am honored to serve as the Assembly member for the 18th Assembly District, representing the great cities of Oakland and Alameda and San Leandro, and also to serve as the chair of the Assembly Health Committee. And I want to thank Assemblymember Eggman for her tremendous leadership, as well as Senators Wolk and Monning for theirs, and for bringing us to this day where we have an opportunity to continue to move the bill and have a vote, which this bill certainly deserves. And I want to thank everyone for being here to support this latest effort to make sure that all Californians have the option to choose a humane, peaceful, and painless death. I'm proud to be up here with these great set of co-authors. I think it's a sign of the growing, building momentum behind this bill. And as the chair of the Assembly Health Committee, I was in support of SB 128. And I'm honored to have the opportunity to support the current version of the bill, which builds on that original effort and makes the first bill even stronger. The authors have continued their diligent work to seek ways to strengthen the bill, make it better, and fine-tune the provisions in it. And now there are very strong provisions to make sure the public reporting requirements are strong and provide effective safeguards, even stronger than the earlier versions. And whether a person is dying of a terminal illness, whether that person has a right to a painless, peaceful, and graceful death is not necessarily something that the legislature can guarantee, but to the extent possible, state policy should support and maximize the opportunity for that to happen. For Californians facing the prospect of a painful or agonizing death, it makes perfect sense that they would want to have the ability to affect the circumstances around their death, that they would want choice, that they would want as many options before them as possible. With the option of aid in dying medication, a person can say their goodbyes to those closest to them and have the support and comfort of their loved ones around them as they pass. I believe that most, if not all, of us would want the option of choosing a peaceful, painless death should we ever be faced with these circumstances. We would want the same for our families, our friends, and our loved ones. And we up here want the same for all Californians. I believe that suffering patients at the end of their life should be able to choose a painless, dignified, and peaceful death, and that's what this bill will provide. Choice for Californians. Thank you for having me, and thank you for your support. I'm honored to be here.
I'd like to call up now another co-author, Assemblymember Autumn Burke.
My name is Assemblymember Autumn Burke. I'm proud to stand here today with my colleagues as a co-author of this bill. Californians have fought for the right to make their own health care choices, and they should not end when they are dying. But sadly, that is not the reality in the state of California. Instead of allowing patients to make the choices that best fit their care needs and their wishes, we're tying their hands. We're forcing them to either accept care on our terms or take drastic, even devastating action. We can have the best hospice or palliative care in the world, but when that is not enough, dying Californians shouldn't have to choose moving to Oregon or suffering until the bitter end. Like all of you, I have heard the arguments of oppositions, the claims that the bill will open the door to fraud and coercion, and the other parade of horror stories. Dying Californians deserve better than fear-mongering. They deserve real choices. They deserve to have their family and friends around them during their final days. For my colleagues that struggle with this issue, I am urging you to take a look at the facts. The safeguards in this bill go far beyond what has been in place in Oregon. There is no rush for someone who is newly diagnosed as terminally ill to end their life. In fact, what I find striking is the number of individuals that receive the prescription that never use it. To them, the comfort of knowing that they have the option if the suffering becomes too unbearable gives them strength to carry on. For each of us here today, it's personal. So many families have been fighting for change. So many have watched their loved ones suffer while we debate and while the debate has stalled in this building. California polls show that the majority of us support this measure, and they deserve to see action. Endings matter, as Assemblywoman Aikman said.
Thank you. Now another co-author, Assemblymember David Chu.
Good morning. I'm David Chu, represent San Francisco, and I am the son of a doctor. I was educated in Catholic school, and like many of my colleagues, spent much time considering and reflecting on this topic, particularly given that there are thousands of Californians every day who are very sick, who are experiencing unbearable pain. Given that these adults at their final stage of their lives have already lost many of their choices, this bill retains the one very important choice that should be left up to anyone facing the ultimate decision. After years of debate on this topic, the time has come for compassion, to allow terminally ill, consenting adults under a physician's supervision with the right to die with dignity. Ms. Maynard and her family's bravery and their willingness to share their stories, as well as the willingness of countless families to share their stories, have captivated our country. However, these stories cannot be allowed to continue. No one should have to leave their home state to seek medical aid in dying, which is why this is so very important. I'm proud to stand with the amazing authors of this bill, with the families, and with representatives of the entire diversity of our state of California. We are white, we are black, we are Asian, we are Latino, we are gay, we are straight, we are young, we are older, and we are all standing for compassion and for choice. And with that, we do hope that our colleagues will be able to join us, and I do believe that someday soon, California will be able to have an end-of-life option, and will be able to allow our brothers and sisters, our mothers and fathers, to move on with dignity.
Thank you. And now I'd like to ask Elizabeth Wallner to come up.
Hi there. This has undone me today. My name is Elizabeth Wallner, and I am a single mother, and I'm living with stage 4 cancer. I have colon cancer that has metastasized to my liver and my lungs. I've been fighting the cancer for the last 4.5 years with chemotherapy, 18 rounds of chemotherapy, multiple surgeries to remove parts of my colon and my liver, radioablation, radiation, and anything else that you can possibly imagine, from shamans to Reiki, and everything in between, to fight this cancer. I'm not afraid to die, but what I am really truly afraid of is having my son and my family watch me struggle and die in pain. I don't want my son's last Thank you. I don't want my son's last image to be of me struggling and in pain. I want this option for me to be able to make a choice and die at home. As well as for all other Californians. So many people that we know and love are going through this. It's not just me, it's not just Brittany, it's nameless and faceless people all over California who are dealing with this on a regular basis, and their families and their friends deserve this right, as we do. Everyone should be able to make the decision for themselves based upon their values and their beliefs. So I urge your support and ask for it personally. Thank you.
We'd now like to ask Debbie Ziegler, Brittany Menard's mom, to come up.
I'm here to speak to you as the mother of Brittany Menard. I bring her picture with me to all of these. I feel her presence. This is very much what she had hoped that her speaking out would bring about. One of my favorite authors, Pema Chodron, writes that nothing ever goes away until it has taught us what we need to know. Today, we are here struggling with this truth. The conversation in California about options for terminally ill is not going away. Prior to her death in Oregon, my daughter, Brittany Menard, filmed a video asking California legislators to look at the way terminally ill people are dying in this great state. She said, no one should have to leave their home and community for peace of mind, to escape suffering, and to plan for a gentle death. It turned out that almost 70% of Californians agree with Brittany on this. Whether or not we as individuals have experienced an extended and torturous death in our own family, many of us have learned that palliative care is not one size fits all. They've witnessed that when a human being is actively dying, suffering, they need and want informed medical choices. They need options. Whether or not we as individuals would choose to seek aid in dying should not affect our ability to accept that other Californians might wish to receive aid in dying. The end of life option bill is not a mandate. It is an option. It is a opening up of options for people. Many Californians are asking me this question: what right does anyone of a specific religious faith have to demand that I behave in concordance with their faith as I face my imminent death? Californians want to be free to die and find peace in their own belief system. They don't want to be ordered about by someone else's belief system to which they do not adhere. Thomas Jefferson wrote about the wall of separation between church and state a long time ago. Now our California legislators must bravely deal with this wall of separation between state and church as they discuss and vote on the end of life option bill. Today, California citizens know a lot more about dying in California than they did a year ago. That's a good thing. They know that the laws that we have are not sufficient. We know we need options. The system in place is not meeting California's needs. This conversation is not going away until we all learn what we need to learn. Thank you very much. Before I step away, I have been asked to speak for Christy, and I'm going to read her statement. Christy, as you all probably know, is in stage 4 lung cancer. She has tumors all over her body, on her spine, liver, brain. She is in late stage 4 cancer. She is afraid, and she is fighting hard every day to try to die peacefully here in California. I'm now going to read what she said. Yesterday evening, exactly on Sunday night at midnight in Portland, Oregon, my mother peacefully passed away while I held her hand in mine. My mother died of stage 4 colon cancer that had been undiagnosed until recently. Because Mom resides in Oregon, where death and dignity is legal, her palliative care doctors were able to discuss all the options that she had as she faced her end. Mom was able to choose what version of support she wished when she died. She was not forced to suffer for weeks. She was not forced to starve to death. Our family jointly supported my mom's final decision. I sat next to her holding her hand, and my dad, her husband of 50 years, held her hand and kissed it. When Mom took her last breath, we were together as a family, and we were all there to comfort Mom. This is exactly what my mother wanted. In a few short months, I, Christy, will be facing death. My death will be from stage 4 lung cancer. However, because I live in California, my end-of-life options are limited. I will not be able to peacefully die in my own bed with my daughter Bailey holding my hand, because aid in dying in California is illegal. Rather, I will be forced to die in a painful and protracted manner, and I will feel like I am drowning. Thus, I implore Americans to think about whether you have the right to prevent me, Christy, to prevent my daughter Bailey, or any other terminally ill, mentally competent person from dying peacefully in the manner they choose. Think about whether you would want a choice about this if you were to get a terminal disease and face death. And then please raise your voice, make it heard all over California. Help me, Christy. This is Christy and her daughter Bailey. It's a single mom and daughter. And this has been very, very hard on Bailey, as you can imagine, to be 21 years old, dealing with your mother dying in such a terrible way. Thank you.
Now we have Dolores Huerta.
Good morning. My name is Dolores Huerta. I am president of the Dolores Huerta Foundation for Community Organizing, co-founder of the United Farm Workers with Cesar Chavez. My mother, Alicia St. John Chavez, died of a terminal breast cancer that spread throughout her body. Her prolonged death was agonizing and excruciating for her and for all of us. And as my sister Alicia, her namesake, said, her death was horrific. All of this happened over 50 years ago. That painful memory of her suffering, we still remember. And our family's not alone when we face these physically and emotionally painful deaths. This is a very shared life experience for many, many Californians. And this is why there is so much strong support from people from every walk of life for the expanded medical aid in dying options for terminally ill people at the end of their lives. Everyone, and especially Californians, we should have the freedom to choose the end-of-life options which are right for them. We should be able to make these decisions with the private and personal decisions in consultation with our doctors, our families, and our faith, free from government interference. The majority of Californians, as we have heard, including 70% of Latinos and 60% of Catholics, like myself, support the End-of-Life Option Act. Additionally, 16 California newspapers have written 27 editorials asking the legislature to make this option available for terminally ill people at the end of their lives. Why did Dr. Robert Olvera have to watch his cancer-stricken daughter, Emily Rose, suffer while she struggled to breathe and she endured excruciating headaches with no pain medication that could alleviate these? Why should Mr. Diaz and his 29-year-old wife, Brittany Maynard, be forced to make this difficult decision to move to Oregon to utilize the Death with Dignity law? Those of us who have cared for a loved one and have witnessed a painful, lengthy dying process, we are urging the California legislature to act now. Now's the time. For those good, caring legislators who could never imagine considering this option for themselves if they were terminally ill, because it may conflict with their values and their beliefs, this vote must be especially tough. But again, You know, as a lifelong advocate for social justice, this has taught me that all of these difficult moments require our utmost compassion. The wisdom to imagine walking in another person's shoes and the ability to respect the wishes of others. This issue is urgent for terminally ill Californians who cannot afford to wait for relief from unbearable suffering in their last days. This is really a human right, and people should be able to make this choice if they need to make it. It's time. Si se puede. Yes, we can. I'm going to say a few words in Spanish. Yo me llamo Dolores Huerta. Soy la presidenta de la Fundación Dolores Huerta, cofundadora de la Unión de Campesinos. Mi madre, Alicia Senchal Chávez, murió de cáncer. Y fue una muerte que fue horrífica, se puede decir. Esa fue no solamente para ella, para toda nuestra familia. Esa experiencia que mi familia tuvo que pasar es la misma que pasan muchas familias latinas. Y nosotros no debemos de tener que sufrir de esta forma. Sabemos que todos los californianos deben de tener la libertad y el derecho para escoger cómo van a terminar sus vidas cuando saben que ya no hay ninguna esperanza y que tienen que sufrir con mucho, mucho dolor. Debemos de tener el derecho de hacer esta decisión privada, consultando con nuestros doctores, nuestras familias y nuestra fe. Y que el gobierno no debe de interferir con esto. Sabemos que la mayoría de californianos, 70% de latinos y también la mayoría de católicos como yo, apoyan este acto para terminar sus vidas. Además de eso, que sabemos que los periódicos de California, 16 de ellos, y han escrito 27 apoyadores de sus periódicos, pidiéndole a la legislatura que hagan esta opción que para las personas que si se van a morir y que no tienen ninguna otra esperanza y que están también terminando sus vidas con mucho, mucho dolor. Así es que esperamos que las personas de la legislatura que están ahorita batallando con esta decisión, que deben de pensar que esta decisión no la tienen que hacer para ellos mismos, pero que no deben de prevenir a otras personas que hagan esta decisión tan difícil para sus familias. Así es que le pedimos, este es un derecho humano y que ellos deben de pensar de todos los demás y no quitarles esta oportunidad para que puedan terminar sus vidas con dignidad si así lo quieren hacer. Esa no es una orden, es una decisión que pueden escoger. So I just want to say again, this is a human right. And those in the legislature that are struggling with this decision should realize that it is not for them, it is a right that everybody should have. It's a human right. Si se puede. Yes, we can. Thank you.
Now we'd like to call up Brittany Mard's widow, Dan Diaz.
Good morning. My name is Dan Diaz, and I am Brittany Menard's husband. Last year, Brittany and I had to move to Oregon so Brittany could access aid in dying medication in order to secure a gentle passing if it were to become necessary for her. Had we stayed here in California, the brain tumor, it would have ended Brittany's life in a brutal manner. By having the option of medical aid in dying in Oregon, Brittany simply took the control back from the tumor so that she could have a peaceful passing and avoid the terrifying and painful death that was otherwise coming for her. Brittany died peacefully in her sleep on November 1st of last year. In January, the end-of-life options legislation was introduced here in California. I stood next to Jennifer Glass at the press conference as she explained to everyone the lung cancer that she had been battling. She described the aggressive treatments that she had endured, the hard side effects that she had suffered. But most of all, she shared her desire to fear less during the end of her life. Jennifer died a week ago today. I went to visit her and her husband, Harlan, who is here today. This is Harlan, Jennifer's husband. On that Tuesday, I sat at her bedside. I saw my dear friend that I had known for 7 months, unconscious, and withering away. The pain that Jennifer was experiencing from the tumor, which had now spread to her brain, had become unbearable. So at Jennifer's request, Jennifer had been put into terminal sedation 5 days earlier. Jennifer died later that night, but that was not the dying process she wanted. Why did she have to endure those 5 days in that manner? My wife Brittany passed away gently. Jennifer's was not as gentle. In either case, it was the individual determining that it was their time. And in either case, the result was the same: death. But the manner of getting there was quite different. Shouldn't the individual have the option of which one of those they would choose for themselves? It is clear that we have an issue here in California where one terminally ill individual, Brittany, has to leave the state in order to die peacefully, and where another individual, Jennifer, has to endure a 5-day, drawn-out process that proved to be absolutely not what she wanted. So yes, we do have an issue here. And the introduction of this legislation in this special session is an example of our elected officials listening to the will of the people. With 7 out of 10 Californians agreeing with Brittany and Jennifer that a terminally ill individual should have access to aid in dying medication in order to secure a gentle passing if necessary, I applaud the authors of this bill. Please look up Jennifer's YouTube clip from that press conference on January 21st to see a true hero to everyone who knew her. Thank you.
Senator Wolk, you need to leave. Do you want to say a few words? Senator Wolk and Senator Monning have been stalwart in this.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming. I do want to first thank Assemblymember Eggman, Assemblymember Alejo, and Stone for agreeing to joint author this bill, and the wonderful co-authors that the Assembly has brought forward. It's heartening that we'll move this forward. I want to say just one thing. First of all, I have a hearing on the tunnels, which you know is important, and I'm the chair, so I need to leave before any questions. But my colleague, Senator Monning, who has done a phenomenal job as a partner and colleague on this issue, will be here to answer your questions, as well as Assemblymember Eggman. For me, what's happened in the last few weeks, if you look at the courts, which is often a place that those who are desperate turn for justice, in the courts in San Diego and in San Francisco, the judges have spoken on this issue of aid and dying relief. And they were remarkably consistent. They said this is something for the legislature to grapple with and decide. And we all agree with that this is the place, this is the crucible, this is the place where these kinds of decisions need to be struggled with and addressed. They were, both judges said that, and I agree with that. It's time for the legislature to act on this issue that so many Californians and frankly so many people across the country care deeply about and need relief. Thank you for allowing me to speak, and thank you all for coming again.
Thank you, Senator. We'll ask Reverend Madison Stokely to come up now.
Good morning. My name is Madison Shockley. I am the pastor of the Pilgrim United Church of Christ in Carlsbad, California. As a minister, I counsel and pray with terminally ill people in my congregation as they prepare for the end of their lives. Listening to their dying wishes is one of the most difficult yet meaningful duties of my call to serve God. We talk about their fears, the unstoppable headaches, the nausea and musculoskeletal pain they have to endure during the last stage of cancers that have spread throughout their frail bodies. These people don't want to die. They would love to live, but they can't. The cancer is ending their lives. They simply want the option to die peacefully, without the excruciating pain that not even the best palliative care and most powerful medication could alleviate. Hearing from these dying people and their families has called me to act so that this option is available to those for whom it would bring comfort and peace in the dying process. As a religious leader, I am deeply concerned about terminally ill Californians who are forced to suffer needlessly at the end of their lives. That is why I am here to support the End of Life Option Act. There is a difference between extending life and simply prolonging a terminally ill person's painful dying process. My faith is in a God whose attributes are love and compassion. God would not abandon a suffering, dying person that chooses the option to die painlessly and peacefully. Unfortunately, the laws in our great state do not give this option to dying Californians. Our commitment to freedom of religion requires us to accept the fact that the spiritual truth for each individual will vary. It is important for each person to follow the God they know, to ask their God for the spiritual gift of discernment, to gain the necessary insight to find their truth. In 1 Samuel 31, we read, "The battle pressed hard upon Saul. The archers found him, and he was badly wounded by them, so that the uncircumcised may not come and thrust him through and make sport of him. Saul took his own sword and fell upon it." Note that the enemies of Saul were fast approaching. He knew that overtaking him, they would torture him, dismember him, humiliate him, and then kill him. Those who would benefit from this legislation are not much different than Saul. They know that they are going to die. The only question is the manner and quality of that death. They know that should their illness overtake them, that it will torture them with pain, it will dismember them, system failure by system failure, and then kill them. Saul made a choice. This legislation allows individuals to make a choice consistent with their own religious and spiritual beliefs. We owe them no less. Thank you.
Senator Monning, did you want to? Okay. So with the conclusion of our prepared remarks today, again, we thank everybody for coming forward, and we hope to have a hearing set on this within the next week or so, and hopefully we'll continue this conversation. We thank again everybody for coming out, for the powerful words, for the grief that was shared here today, as well as the hope, and we are now open to answering any questions you might have. We have been committed the entire time that this be heard this year. There are people waiting for this to be heard this year. We think it is irresponsible just to send this to the voters without this legislative body doing its due diligence. So with whatever means were available to us, we were looking to go forward. There was clearly a lot of support in this body for this bill to pass. This was an avenue to take, and we chose to take it. I think anytime you do legislation, you have to think about what the governor may or may not do, but that is up to the governor. The special session is about improving healthcare, right? It's about making healthcare work better. Healthcare is about providing care, but it's also about providing relief at the end of life.
There's been concern about insurance companies in Oregon actually promoting end of life as opposed to treatment. Are you concerned that that would be an issue here?
We haven't really found any evidence of that. That's one of the scare things that are thrown out. But when people present the array of options, it's one of the options. There are felony provisions against people pushing that. But when you provide the array of options, that's one of the options that's provided. I think what Debbie Ziegler said was very profound, right? We'll go back to Thomas Jefferson with the separation of church and state. I'm also a Catholic. When we introduced and I'm also, I've said this before, I'm a longtime social worker who worked in hospice. I sat with hundreds of people as they have died. I've sat with my mother, my father, my sister-in-law, my grandmother, my godmother, as they died. Death is no stranger to me, and it takes many different forms. I invited my bishop to come in, and anybody who knows, assembly members have meetings every 15 minutes. My bishop asked for an hour and a half, and I gladly gave it to him. And we had a long discussion. We agree on most things, but this is one of those where we divert. And I agree and respect the Catholic's faith consistency on issues of life. I would invite some of my colleagues who are Catholic about some of their other issues about life, because I think consistency is important. My main takeaway from my bishop, and I think that is the Catholic foundation, is that there is pain and there is beauty and meaning making in suffering. And as I said to my bishop at that time, I agree with your choice to be able to find that joy and that meaning making in your own suffering, but everybody else may not want that or may not desire that. It's a personal choice for each individual and each individual's family.
Can I make a comment on that as well? Thank you. Just on that question, totally consistent with Assemblymember Eggman. In our meetings with church representatives, we've assured them we don't seek to change church doctrine. And if you look at the architecture of the legislation, we've included provisions that would allow any medical institution to opt out. In other words, a religious hospital would not have to participate, and doctors working under their control they could prohibit them from participating in this. In my view, that's one of the values of this legislation, that even a legislator who, because of their own personal religion or values, may not choose this for themselves, there's a benefit to us building in the protections that we have without the intent, as we assure the church. I don't expect that we're ever going to remove your opposition, but we're glad to put in protections that address some, if not all, of your concerns, which we've done. No, they've been in there, and they were in SB 128, and they carry into the extraordinary session.
Are you concerned that the fact that this healthcare extraordinary session is supposed to be about reducing healthcare costs, that your opponents might use that detail against you in light of the scare tactics you were talking about?
Well, as Assemblymember Eggman said, if you look at the call for these two extraordinary sessions, one on transportation, one on health and health care, it's a broad ambit in looking at health care issues. We think it's fully appropriate.
There's been some pushback, too, from the medical community. Do you feel like you've overcome that at this point?
CMA.
Yeah, we've done. I mean, Senator Wolk and Monning and myself, we've met with every medical organization I think there is to meet with, and to be able to get CMA to go neutral, I think was huge. And you know, they see this coming also and appreciate the protections we put in place to be able to have them go neutral on this issue.
Let me ask you, too, I believe this is about the 8th time that this issue's come forward with the legislature. What makes you think that there will be a different end result?
I think California has changed. I mean, we've all changed, right? As healthcare has expanded, as people live longer, as people are used to more options in their daily life, people are expecting different options at the end of their life. The speaker is also a co-author of this bill. It's already passed the Senate. with this bill. Again, we are working this bill like we work any bill. There is no guarantee of success at the end, but this issue, these people, everybody deserves for this to have a full hearing, a full discussion.
What's at stake if this goes to the ballot? You sort of mentioned that already, but can you spell out?
What's at stake? Well, then it goes to the ballot, and we don't. Compassion and Choices would be in charge of how that is drafted and as it goes forward. Certainly, some of the protections that are put in right now. If you talk to focus groups and things, everyone doesn't agree with that. So I don't know what the final version would be. I think it would be different than what is in place now, which is, I think, another reason why some of the medical associations are more eager for it to pass this way, where they have, again, a chance to come to the table and deliberate as we've done, to be able to negotiate something that people can agree with to go forward. If it goes to the ballot, it is much less. It is a less vigorous process of developing good policy. That's certainly a potential.
Can I offer one comment on, if I could just offer one comment. So much of the focus of today's commentaries and questions are around the end-of-life option for a terminally ill patient. I think it's important to underscore that in the legislation, it requires the attending physician and the consulting physician to fully explore hospice care, palliative care, and pain management as part of the treatment of that patient in the discussion of an end-of-life option. So we do not see these as mutually exclusive medical options at the end of life. Rather, I think it's better to look at it as part of a continuum, and we think the end-of-life option is the compassionate addition to the existing continuum of end-of-life options.
We'll take one more question and then. We have two committees to go through, the Health Committee and then the Finance Committee, and then if it passes both of those, it'll go to the floor. The Assembly, that's correct. And then it'll have to go back over to the Senate. The House, that it's already passed on concurrence, and then it goes to the governor's desk. And I would add that just some of what Senator Monning to add on to that, research shows, and again, we have almost 2 decades of research from the state of Oregon, that the use of hospice care has gone up. Partly because we are a death-defying culture, but the more you're able to talk about it, the more people exercise their options. And so because I think they have that option there, I lived up there when it went into effect, people are able to have more discussions about what they want at the end of life. And so the use of hospice care has actually gone up, and for the majority of the people who use this option are enrolled in hospice at the time of their death.
The committee is the specially composed health committee for the special session and not the same standing health committee that heard it in regular session. Is that correct?
That health committee never heard it, but yes, this is a different composition, but it remains with the same chair, Assemblymember Bonta.
If it was in the purview of the standing health committee, this is a different
That's correct. Yes. Yes. Okay. Thank you all very much for coming today, and we appreciate it.